Yes, and this video is a collaboration with Programming Knowledge. In this video, we'll talk about how we can implement a POST API in our Spring Boot REST API application. So, in the previous video, we talked about how we can implement the GET API, so where we get all the to-dos from the server, or we get a particular to-do which is by the ID from the server. So let's just refresh what we had done in the previous video now. So we had built a business service or a to-do service which handles all the business logic for our application. So for initially, we now have an in-memory database where we have objects inside an array, but later in the videos, we'll actually convert to a proper database and then we'll actually use the JPA APIs and etc. for our database. For now, we have a simple in-memory database and the logic for our APIs is here. So for getting all the to-dos, we just return all the array list and it is automatically converted into JSON when we return it back to the view. The next thing which we did was we had implemented the get to do, which gives you a task based on the ID, which is unique, and we use streams filter to get it. So we had converted our array list to a stream. We filtered it by the ID, which is equal to the ID given, and then we got the first one which matched the ID. Now, in this video, we'll talk about how we can implement a post API and what we have to do and the kind of business service that we have to write. So let's get started. So now, to do a post API, there are some changes which we need to do in the annotation for the request mapping. So let's see what that is now. So we need a request mapping because we need to map the request. So request mapping, and we do, and now instead of just this one, what we have to do first is we need to tell Spring Boot that this request mapping is a post mapping and not a get. So all of these are get by default, but we need to specify explicitly that this one is a post method. So for that, we have an argument called as method, and all we have to do is make it to the request method called as post. So request method dot post. And now the next thing which we need to do is pass in the URL where we have to give out the post request. That is going to be slash to-dos only. So let's see how this works now. So now we have our usual post method. So public void create to do, and now we have a request body. So we will have a request body where we actually pass in the JSON to create a to do, and the JSON will contain the ID, name, summary, and description. So here we need a to do object called as to do to be passed into as the parameter, but the to do has to be the request body. So we need to let Spring know that whenever you go on to slash to do and pass in a request body, that should be given to this method in the argument, and this should also be the request body. So for this, we have an annotation called as request body, which makes it really easy to actually pass in these. So let's import these now. So we import request body and let's import request method, and we're good to go. So let's see, invalid, oh sorry, the value is equal to this, yes. Yeah, and now all we have to do is call our service to handle the creation of the task for us. So we do a return to do service dot create to do, and we pass in the object. Now we haven't implemented our create to do yet, so we need to do that now. And just so we are clear about the controller, we have a request mapping where the method is post. So it's pretty straightforward, right? So we have a post method, we have the value as slash to do's, but will be having a request body to it. So the request body is a to do object which will be written in JSON, and Spring automatically converts it to a pure POJO, so we don't have to worry about that. And then we have a business service method here. So let's create that method now. So instead of object, we can have ToDo. So now here we will be implementing the logic for our create request. So we do a return todos dot add, and we add the ToDo. So pretty simple, pretty straightforward for now, nothing complicated. And let's see what the problem is here. Oh, sorry, this is a void, my bad. And we don't have to return anything, we just have to create it. Yes, because the return value is void, we don't have to send. You can send in a boolean, so you can send in a true or false. So you can just check whether if it is successfully created, so send a true, or if it is not, and if it actually raises some error, then then send a false. So we'll be adding a lot of validation to our request later in the videos, but for now let's see how a simple post request works. So here all we have to do is add a to-do to our array list, and that's it, we're done with creating to-dos. So this is how you implement a post request in a Spring Boot application using the MVC framework. So let's refresh our memory and let's see what we have done here. So we have a controller, a to-do controller, which injects a to-do service, and the service handles all the business logic for our application. Next, we have the request mappings for the URL. So what happens when we do a /todos, we go to the method get all to-dos, we call the service method, which is a singleton. So the service method returns all the to-dos which are inside this, so 1, 2, 3. And next, we obtain one by the ID, which is a path variable integer ID. Then we go to get to-do, and we have the logic here for it. The last thing which we do is create to-do. So we do a create to-do, and we just add the to-do to our list. So let's run this and see if our post API is working properly or not. So for that, all you have to do is go to our to-do list and run as Java application. So the Spring has been released to the server and should be up in no time. So just give it a few seconds, and yeah, we're good to go. So now instead of using the browser, we'll be using Postman. So let's actually start using Postman now. So Postman is basically an API tool or a software which can help you handle APIs properly, so you don't have to worry about using something else. So now that we have our server running, we can send a GET request to to-dos and hit send. And as you can see, we get our let me just get it up. Yeah, we get our to-dos here. Now let's do a post request. So when we do a post request, we have to change a few things. So first, we need to set the content type as JSON, which tells that we are going to actually pass in a JSON object or a JavaScript object. And here I have a body. So since we only have 3 tasks in our to-dos, let's add a 4th one, which is task 4, summary 4, description 4, and we press send. And we don't return anything, but we get the status as 200. So let's do a get and see whether we have actually added our 4th one. So as you can see, we have the 4th ID here. So that means the 4th to-do was added to our list of tasks, and that can be confirmed with the body which is returned when you do a get. And yeah, so that is how you implement a post API in your Spring Boot application. And in the next video, we'll talk about how we can add or how we can update our tasks and also delete our tasks. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.